Over the course of his inimitable NHL career, Wayne Gretzky broke too many records to count. And then, more often than not, he broke them again. However, in 1981-82, the Great One authored a record-breaking performance that even he couldn't replicate, turning in the most prolific goal-scoring season the NHL has ever and will ever see. By the 1981-82 season, it was already abundantly clear that Wayne Gretzky was built different. Not just a generational player, but the most prodigious talent the game had ever seen, by a mile. 2 years prior, in his first NHL season, Gretzky potted 51 goals for the Edmonton Oilers and shattered the previous records for assists and points by a first-year player. In fact, he finished tied with Marcel Dion for the league lead in points with 137 and earned himself the Hart Trophy as the league's most valuable player. He was the youngest player to ever win that award. Then, as a sophomore, the Phenom turned in the most productive season in league history, breaking both Bobby Orr's single-season record for assists and Phil Esposito's single-season record for points. So just some quick accounting here, Gretzky had 106 goals and 195 assists through his first 2 seasons in the NHL. 301 points in 159 games, with 2 Hart Trophies and an Art Ross to show for it. Yeah, the kid was special. But as otherworldly as Gretzky was through his first 2 NHL seasons, it was in year 3, 81-82, that the Great One transformed from a superstar into a mythical creature, a god even, delivering a season so extraordinary that it is, more than 40 years later, literally unbelievable. Now before we get into it, I know what you're gonna say. It was so easy to score in the 80s, and you're not wrong. At that moment in time, skaters were more evolved than goalies, who were still overwhelmingly utilizing the dated stand-up style and whose pads were essentially newspapers. And the result was a uniquely high-scoring period in NHL history. But here's the thing, every other skater played in that environment, and only Wayne Gretzky was able to do what Wayne Gretzky did in 81-82. Now believe it or not, Gretzky actually got off to a slow start that year. 2 games in, he only had 1 point, and thus ended his slow start. Gretzky scored a goal in each of his next 5 games and 7 of his next 8, adding 10 assists over that span to bring his point total to 17 through 10 games. 3 weeks into the season, in other words, it looked like another typical Gretzky season was in the works. But it wasn't. On Halloween 1981, after recording his first multi-goal game of the season in his previous contest, Gretzky absolutely terrorized the Quebec Nordiques. That night, Gretzky scored 4 times, his 3rd career game with 4 or more goals. And a momentous thing happened in the wake of that Halloween outburst. Gretzky started shooting more. A lot more. In fact, from Halloween through November 27th, a span of 13 games, Gretzky recorded 68 shots on goal, an average of more than 5 per game. To put that in context, through the first 2 seasons of his career, Gretzky averaged less than 3.5 shots per game. And never before, by the way, had he recorded that many shots over a 13-game span. And guess what? A lot of those shots went in the net. Like, a lot. Over that 13-game stretch, Gretzky scored a whopping 21 goals, recording multiple 4-goal games and never once going consecutive contests without a goal. This was a different Gretzky, an even scarier Gretzky, because he had plenty of gifted teammates to set up, future Hall of Famers like Mark Messier, Paul Coffey, Glenn Anderson, and Yari Curry, but number 99 was just content to put the puck in the net himself. By the end of November, Gretzky had 31 goals, 8 more than the next most prolific scorer. He also led the league in assists, but I digress. Anyway, at roughly 1.2 goals per game and almost 1.3 assists per game, Gretzky was on pace to obliterate Phil Esposito's single-season record for goals and surpass his own single-season record for assists. But that pace, especially in terms of goal scoring, was so extraordinary, so superhuman, that he had to cool off. And as the calendar flipped to December, he did. In fact, Gretzky was held scoreless in 4 straight games to begin the month, which was at that point his longest scoring drought of the season, and thus ended his slow December. Gretzky went on an all-time heater following his goal-scoring mini-slump, lighting the lamp at least once in 9 straight games. A streak he closed out with a 4-goal game, followed by a historic 5-goal game. Because it was that 5-goal game, the pinnacle of a stretch that saw him score 19 times in 9 contests, that propelled Gretzky to the 50 mark in his 39th game of the season, making him by far the fastest player ever to reach that plateau.
Anderson knocks it down. He's got it to Gretzky. He's got the open net. Gretzky, will he shoot? He does. He scores! Wayne Gretzky's 50th goal. He has broken the record. His 50th 50th goal in 39 games. The Oilers are off the bench.
Before Gretzky, the fastest players to reach 50 in a season were Mike Bossy and Maurice Richard, both of whom needed 50 games to reach that benchmark. There was simply no stopping him. By New Year's Day, Gretzky had blown well past the 100-point mark, he led the league in goals by a margin of 20, and he had 40 more points than second-place Peter Stastny. He also hadn't missed a game for a team on its way to its first winning season in the NHL, its first division title, and the best record in its conference. Ultimately, a franchise in the preliminary stage of becoming one of the most intractable dynasties in league history. Barring a disaster, in other words, Gretzky breaking the single-season goals record and establishing a new single-season points record had become a question of when, not if. And as it turned out, the answer was soon. Seemingly energized by hitting the 50-goal plateau, January and February were Gretzky's two most prolific months of the season in terms of shots per game, which meant continued headaches for opposing goalies. Over that 2-month stretch, Gretzky tallied 4 more hat-tricks and had more multi-goal games than 0-goal games. He also managed just 1 game in that span with 0 points. 1 pointless game in 2 months. And it was during that magical run of 73 points in 26 games that Gretzky claimed the hallowed single-season goals record that had seemed inevitable for months, potting number 77 in late February and breaking Esposito's once seemingly unbreakable record.
Sabres get it back. Patrick gave it away. Here's Gretzky.
In the end, however, Gretzky didn't merely take the record for himself. He made sure that no one else would so much as threaten it ever again. Gretzky, who finished his record-breaking night with a hat-trick, added 13 more goals over his final 16 games that season. In doing so, he became the first player ever to reach the 80-goal plateau, the first player ever to reach the 90-goal plateau, and ultimately finished his season with an astonishing, mind-boggling 92 goals. 28 more than second-place Bossy. 92 goals. If there wasn't video evidence, we wouldn't believe it. That's how impossible that number is. And to this day, more than 40 years later, the player to come closest to Gretzky's mark of 92 is Wayne Gretzky, who tallied 87 goals in 83-84. But no other player has ever come within 5 goals of Gretzky's record. And as the decades have passed, the prospect of reaching Gretzky has only become more fantastical. The highest single-season goal total since the early 1990s is 76, and no player has hit 70 this century. Needless to say, in setting that unbreakable record of 92, Gretzky also established a bevy of accompanying records that still stand today, including most even-strength goals in a season and most games in a season with 3 or more goals. But here's the most absurd part. In the same year that he set the single-season record for goals, Gretzky also smashed his own record for assists in a season, adding 120 helpers for the historically potent Oilers to finish the campaign with a preposterous 212 points. 212! 48 more than his record-breaking 80-81 campaign, an average of 2.65 points per game. A number so beyond comprehension that it could only be threatened by one guy, Wayne Gretzky. Yeah, he ended up breaking his own record with 215 points in 85-86. All told, by the way, he cracked the 200-point mark 4 times in his career. Nobody else has even done it once. And that really is the essence of Wayne Gretzky. Nobody could do what he did. He is truly singular. And never was that more obvious than in 81-82, the greatest goal-scoring season hockey will ever see. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button.